Alrighty guys, so jumping into our first project, we are using this dollar napkin holder from the dollar store. I'm also going to be using some assorted yarns and really pretty colors, a hot glue gun, white spray paint, and scissors. So what we are creating is kind of like a decorative object. It really doesn't serve like a humongous like functional purpose, but it is super cute, very retro and quirky, and just like kind of adds a handmade touch to your space. So I started off by taking that napkin holder and giving it a coat of white spray paint. I love this Rust-Oleum like paint and primer. It just works really great. Once that was completely dry, what I'm doing next is I'm going to be cutting out small strips of yarn, and I'm basically going to be color blocking sections onto this to kind of create like a rainbow, half circle, just decor piece. I feel like this is definitely something you would go in like an artisan shop and you would just see it on the shelf. It would be like $64 and it would be made by like some lady in, I don't know, who has like 64 cats, you know, and she just loves making things. And you're like, oh my gosh, I want to buy this so badly, but it's $64. So we're just recreating it. So I started off with this really pretty kind of like rusty coral color. And a tip for you guys is once you reach the end, cut off your excess and then use a little bit of hot glue and the end of a paintbrush just to make sure everything is secured on the back side. Because once you have like your glue on the back side, no one's going to see it. So feel free to add as much as you need. I'm then going in with this little cream color, and I'm also definitely like varying the weights of the yarn. That first one was a bit thicker than the cream one, and we are just basically creating color blocked sections. So this next yarn was one that kind of had a twisted color in there. I'm doing a darker orange rusty color here, and I'm kind of going for almost a retro, just like sunshiny, rusty coral tone. Like there's no rhyme or reason to this. You can really go with whatever fits your personal style. I've just been loving this color palette lately and like for quite a while, as you guys know on my channel. Going with a darker color here, and you're just going to continue this all the way through, and then once you reach the very end, you're going to add your last strand, glue it off, and that really finishes everything off. You can go on the back side, add a little bit more glue if needed, and then really guys, this is your finished off little quirky decorative object. This project is like the star of the show. I'm obsessed with it. I used a wreath form from the dollar store, some white spray paint, macrame rope, scissors, and a tweezer. And then I also got my inspo from this Urban Outfitters mirror. I loved it, but it was $99. And I was like, we could recreate this for under $10. So I'm starting off with the wreath form. I'm gonna give it a nice coat of that white spray paint. And I just wanted to do this because any areas that are peeking through, I just wanted it to blend in a little bit more than having it be black. So the next what I did was grabbed my macrame cord, and what I'm doing with this, and I'll link this exact spool from Amazon in the description box for you guys, is I am cutting 6-inch sections of rope, and you're literally just gonna need to cut like 500 6-inch sections. Not really, well, you're just gonna have to cut accordingly to your wreath size, but what I'm doing is I'm starting on the second innermost circle, and I'm gonna be folding my rope pieces in half, pulling the ends through the loop, and I'm pretty sure all you guys know how to do this. It's like a very self-explanatory like knot. You're just gonna pull them through on the second circle, and you're going to be doing this continuously all around the circle. And then once you reach like the end of a section, I went ahead and I unraveled each section, and then I pulled each piece apart. But I'll show you in a second like a little tip that I found out halfway through, which would have made life so much easier. But I manually unraveled every single rope and then manually like ripped them apart. The actual unraveling wasn't that hard, but the fraying part was a little bit more challenging. And once you get the section done, you can go through with a pair of scissors and just trim any excess pieces that are kind of like just random stray long sections, and you're just going to be repeating this process. So I continued cutting 6-inch sections of rope, looping them on. Here I'm about a quarter of the way done. I finished half of that second loop, but I'm going to be doing 2 layers. That's why I started on the second loop. You could actually do more than 2 if you wanted to, but I just felt like 2 was definitely enough. So then once you loop all those on, you're going to go through and fray them once again. This is just going to make it really full. And here's my little tip / trick that I wanted to share with you is I grabbed tweezers, and this made the process of just like shredding kind of the rope sections so much easier, so much quicker. It was just very, very nice when I figured this out. You could probably also use a comb if you wanted to. The tweezers were just handy for me, so I just went through and really frayed all of it. This is gonna make it nice and fluffy and full for our first ring. So this is what we have so far. And we're gonna be doing the same exact thing on the innermost circle using the same exact length, the 6-inch sections. And that is because we want there to be kind of like a tiered layer. So I went through off camera, did all that. You're gonna flip the sections to the inside and then fray them with your tweezers once again. Flip them back, and then you're gonna repeat this section all the way around. So as you can see, using that same length, you're gonna have like maybe an inch of the back layer showing, which I think is very, very crucial, just so that it shows that there's 2 layers. It looks a little bit more full and just a lot more pretty. Once that is completely done, you can flip it over, and I grabbed this mirror actually at Joann's Fabrics. You can get it using a 40% off coupon, and it's like $4 with a coupon. I used my Gorilla Glue hot glue sticks, and I went around the edge, placed my mirror down, and then I flipped it over to make sure everything looked pretty good, adjusted all the strings, and then I went back and just piped a lot of glue to make sure that that mirror was stuck. And no need to add a loop for hanging, because you could actually hang it on the outermost ring of the form. Moving into project number 3, I really wanted to create more of those decorative objects. I've been loving them for shelf spaces, and I'm using rawhide donuts in this project. And I do want to give a disclaimer that I had literally zero idea that these were made from animal products. I really did think that rawhide was like a man-made material that was just like rolled up into a shape, and it was just made of some random stuff. I don't even know, but it actually is made from animal products. So I just want to let you guys know that prior to sharing it with you. That way you are aware. And I'm also going to be using some black spray paint, wooden dowel, wooden base, drill, and a hot glue gun. So I took these little rawhide donuts from the dollar store and I gave them a coat of Mod Podge. I just wanted to seal everything inside that was like in this rawhide donut. I don't even know what it is in it, but I'm just like painting it on there and just like sealing it in there. I didn't want it to have a smell or anything like that, and it actually had zero odor, zero smell at all. It just honestly smelled like nothing. And then once those were dry, I gave them a coating of black spray paint, but look at this little face I created with that circle. I thought it was funny. So I gave them a coating of this black matte spray paint. And the reason I picked these out at the store was that they were the most organic objects that I could find. I thought they were really, really great for a project like this. So I used a birch wood piece, and then I also use a drill, and I'm gonna drill halfway through this birch wood object. I've had this in my stash for a while. I got this at Joann's a long time ago. And I drilled about halfway through, and I used a wooden dowel as well. Used some hot glue inside of there, pushed the wooden dowel down, and then once your little donuts are dry, you can actually put these on the base. And you can also create these donuts from something like clay if you wanted to recreate this project. Just keep that in mind. And I glued these down onto the stick, and I actually glued them to each other. And I just wanted to create kind of this like 3-circle, almost sculpture look. So I glued these down using that Gorilla Glue hot glue, which is such a strong bond hot glue, keep in mind. And once they were completely dry, I placed them inside of a box and sprayed the entire thing like 2 full times with that black spray paint, just to make it look like one cohesive object. And in the end, I think it turned out like such a stunning piece of artwork. Jumping into our first project here, I'm using this face-shaped terracotta pot that I found at the 99-cent store. I could not believe they had this here, and this was actually $1.99, but I just couldn't pass it up. And then I also opted for some matte black spray paint. I think this would look great in any color, but I decided to go ahead and spray this with a matte black spray paint. Now, I want to also keep in mind, guys, that if you're using this as a planter, the spray paint is a totally fine option, but something I realized after the fact is that spray paint, even when dry, can still be combustible or flammable, so keep that in mind if you're turning this into a candle, I would actually opt for a black acrylic paint because it's water-based. And I've had these two candles in my stash since last year. I have not burned them, so I was like, I'm going to repurpose these. And how you can repurpose old candles, especially ones that you've used a lot, is you're just going to fill up a pot halfway with water and let it simmer for about 30 minutes or so. You're just going to watch it, and you're going to let the wax on the inside melt down all the way until it is completely translucent, as you can see here. I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit and just let that sit. Once your face pot has fully dried, what we're going to do is actually put a wick in the inside. And I actually repurposed this from one of the candles. After it was fully melted down, I just pulled the wick right out, washed it, and glued it down to the center of our face pot. So this is how it looks. And then you're going to want to carefully pour the hot wax on the inside. Now you can actually let this cool down for a little bit before it'll start solidifying again. And that's what I did, but make sure to use a hot pad or something so you do not burn yourself, or have your parents help or something like that. So I poured this onto the inside almost all the way to the top, and you're just gonna let this dry for about an hour to two until it solidifies completely. And the total cost of the candle project was about $13 with the candles, but keep in mind guys, if you wanna use it as a planter, it would only cost you about $3. For the second project, I'm using this wire basket from the Dollar Tree, and it's just a wire hanging basket. So what I'm going to start off by doing is actually unclipping the chain portion, and I'm going to discard this, or I'm actually going to keep it but use it for a separate project. I'm just going to need the wire basket base for this project, and I'm first going to start by giving it a coating of white spray paint. So I did this on the front side, and then once this was actually dry, I flipped it over and did it on the inside as well, making sure everything was coated. And I'm using the macrame cord, which I'll link below. This is from Amazon. It's the one I always use on my channel. I'm going to be starting off by gluing this down to start, and how I'm going to be wrapping this around the entire pot is literally just going from one little peg to the next and just wrapping it one time. I feel like this is a lot easier to see as I do it on camera as opposed to me mentioning it. So you're just going to go to the next peg, wrap it around once, and you're literally going to be repeating this around the entire basket all the way until you reach the bottom. Basically, we're going to want this to look a little bit more like a macrame basket as opposed to this like wire bundt cake looking situation. So we're going to be wrapping this all the way around, all the way to the bottom. It's pretty repetitive, and I actually did this in probably about 15-foot sections. That way I wasn't using too much string and having to pull too much at a time. Once you get to the ending, just glue it off and then glue on a new piece starting on the next peg and repeat the process. Once you reach the bottom, you can just tie it off and then cut off the excess, and this is what we have so far. But I also wanted to cover the entire top ring as well, just to give it a very finished look, because I didn't even like the look of the metal on the top. So I went around and wrapped the macrame cord around the entire top section until you reach the full perimeter of the basket. Once done with that, you can just glue off your strands, cut off any excess, and now we are going to add the little hanging portion. And I actually opted to use the macrame cord as well for this, just because I thought it would tie in with the vibe of this a little bit more than that chain would. But you could use a chain if you wanted to. I just opted for the cording that kind of coordinated with our basket. So just fold some 6-foot sections in half, loop them through, and pull them tight, and that will actually finish off your hanging basket. Go ahead and tie off all your strands at the top, creating a loop to hang this up, and then you can actually hang it up and you are good to go. This is a macrame planter that literally only cost us $6 to create, which is such a great price. Next up, we're going to be creating some cute little wall frames with these metal serving trays that I found at the Dollar Tree. So what I'm starting off by doing is actually using my metal punch. This is just like an industrial hole punch to punch through on both of these frames to create 2 spots where I'm able to hang it up. So I measured about 2.5 inches in from each edge on the actual rectangle shape. And then on the oval, I just went ahead and punched them above each of the little fleur-de-lis motifs that were on either edge. And once those were punched, I brought it outside and used some matte matte farmhouse black spray paint. This is the black spray paint I used throughout the entire video, and I gave it 2 good coatings of this spray paint, but keep in mind that you can totally customize these to match your decor. I think it would look super great in like a brass or even a white or even a color as well. So once those were fully dry, I brought them back inside, and I'm gonna use some black chain and black jump rings. These are both from Joann's Fabrics, and I'm measuring out the amount of chain I want to actually hang this up with. And I swear I always see frames like this that have a chain detailing on the top of them and then like a glass insert in the middle, but they're always pretty pricey. So I wanted to create my very own version on a super affordable budget. So what I'm doing is opening the jump ring, slipping our cut chain piece through, and then closing the jump ring with the pliers. And I actually opted to put 2 jump rings through each hole and then through each piece of chain just to make it a little bit more sturdy. And I also feel like it gave it sort of like a double ring effect, which just looks nice overall in the end. So I added 2 rings to this section here, and I'm repeating the process on the opposite side as well, opening 2 jump rings, slipping them through both the tray and then also the chain, and then closing it. And you're gonna be repeating the same exact process for the oval shape as well. As you can see here, I actually just opted to have the oval shape hang more vertical as opposed to horizontal, just because I loved the look of this. Closing up the jump rings there, and then once you're completely done closing your jump rings and having the little hanging portion done, I actually added some artwork from Jordan Clark. I love these prints that she created. I will link them below for you guys. And that finished off these frames, and the total cost per frame is about $5, which I think is great because you can create multiple of these and really create a cool gallery wall vibe. Here is our largest scale project and probably one of my favorites. I started off by using 3 of these garden fences from the 99-cent store. They were actually $2.49 each, but I used 3 of them. And I also grabbed this mirror from my stash. I already had this, but it's an 8x8 mirror from Joann's Fabrics. And what I'm gonna start off by doing is using a saw to cut off the ends of each side. So I'm cutting off 1 square section. This is kind of like a grid. So we're gonna need a total of a 6x2 grid of this like wooden material, this wood fencing, to go on the left and right side of the mirror. As you can see, this is what it's going to look like once you cut off each side. And here it is laid over the top of the left and right side of the mirror. Now we're going to be needing to cut pieces to go on the bottom and top. So what I'm doing is I'm just cutting again a 2x2 section of this grid, and I'm cutting off 1 of the double sections on each side, if that makes sense. So there's not going to be 2 total pieces of wood on each side. There's only going to be 1. So this is going to fit perfectly in between, and you're going to repeat the same exact process for the top portion as well, cutting off into a 2x2 grid. And the next what I wanted to do was actually spray paint this. I wasn't a humongous fan of the original wood color. I wish it was just a little bit lighter. It was almost like a reddish toned wood. So what I did was I gave it a coating of white spray paint just to make this fit a little bit more in with my aesthetic of my room, because I actually want to keep this. It's kind of more of an art piece, honestly, as opposed to a usable mirror since it is pretty small. But I did give it a total of 2 full coats of a white flat spray paint. And I'm using my Gorilla Glue hot glue sticks. These are great for, as you can see here, wood, plastic, metal, and glass. So what I'm starting off by doing is adding a generous amount of hot glue onto these 2 long wooden sections and just sticking it and adhering it down to the left side of our square mirror. I did it on the opposite side as well. And then as you can see here, the panels just fit perfectly on the top and bottom. So you're just going to glue those panels on the top section and they kind of just match up. And then you're also going to be gluing them on the bottom section to finish off the entire framing of this mirror. But what I wanted to also do was make this a little bit more secure by flipping it over and adding some of these miniature popsicle sticks. I just added these almost as little joint sections just to reinforce the backside. So I added this wherever we had any connections that were not made on the mirror itself. So lastly, what you're going to do is just add a couple of strings in the backside with some hot glue. That way you're able to hang this up. I added one so it could hang vertically and also diagonally. So the total cost of this project was $13.46, which I think is great for kind of a statement mirror like this one.